In today's journey through disappearing London, I'll be sampling the delights of London's original fast food, finding out what this telescope is doing on the top of Hampstead Heath, and trying my hand at the fine art of balloon shaping. Don't worry, all will be explained. But first, I'm shopping for shoes. Out for a stroll on a cold, wet and miserable day in London town, first prerequisite, an umbrella. The second most important thing is a stout pair of walking shoes, and luckily I know just the place to find some. This is James Taylor's in Marylebone, a traditional London bootmakers. For over 150 years they've been handcrafting shoes for a long list of loyal customers, from well-heeled aristocrats to Russian spies. The man with the tape measure is Peter Schweiger. He took over the company from his father back in the 1950s. I say, what a jolly fine shop. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Suggs.
So how long has this shop been here?
Oh, a good while. My father moved in here in 1954, but the building was put up in 1790. This part of Marylebone was developed then, and there was a shoemaker called Robert Bell, who was the first occupant, and his family were here until about 1860. So it's got a good pedigree.
But the shop's called James Taylor and Son. Who was James Taylor?
Well, James Taylor was a shoemaker who came from Norfolk, and he set up business in London in Great Portland Street, which was at that time a very fashionable part of London, like Bond Street now. And he made shoes for the founders of the department stores in Oxford Street, like D.H. Evans and John Lewis. A very good shoemaker.
There were once more than 100 members of the West End Bootmakers Association. Today there are only 4. Pete is the head of the organisation and cares passionately about the history of this threatened trade. He even has a mini shoe museum on the shop floor. Prize exhibits include these shoes that were made around 60 years before James Taylor first opened for business.
And the shoes are a family, daddy, mummy and 3 children, and they're just one shoe, and they're very delicate, made roughly 1790.
And a rather fine-looking walking boot there.
This was made for Sir Edmund Hillary to use to climb Mount Everest when he went to do it in 1953.
Beautiful looking thing too.
Yeah.
Peter reckons his team can turn their hand to most styles. They even had an order for a pair of spats like these a couple of years ago. Very natty. But what makes this shop almost unique is the fact that all the shoes are still made here on the premises. The workshops are hidden from public view down in the basement. Oh, this is it. Backstage at the shoemakers. This is the bit that customers never get to see. But there would have been a time in London when there were literally hundreds of shops like this that made their own shoes on the premises. Nowadays, there's probably, well, you could count them on the toes of one foot. These workshops have been dedicated to the shoemaker's art ever since this building first went up. Apart from the electric lights and a bit of modern machinery, the tools of the trade are the same as they've ever been. The walls are lined with wooden moulds of customers' feet called lasts. Some of them date back to Victorian times, but they're making new ones all the time. So Sebastian, each one is individually different from the next, a bit like fingerprints almost.
Completely. We make these all for every client. Every time we have a new client, we make a new last for them. So, yeah, totally.
And how long have you been doing this, Sebastian?
Well, I started studying about 10 years ago, and I think I've been working actually in the industry for about 6 years now.
And how did your interest in shoes come about?
I'm actually from a long line of shoemakers. Skipped a few generations, but my great-grandfather made shoes in Poland at the turn of the last century.
Once the last is finished, it's handed over to the cutting room. This is where the shoe really starts to take shape.
Yeah, that's right. This customer actually wanted... he saw this model and he liked it, and it has a thistle design punched into the upper. So I made the pattern like that with a thistle design, and then that will then be punched through by hand, using hand punchers, onto the leather.
Finally, the shoes are coated in wax and polish and ready for their new feet. And what for you is the secret of a well-made, handmade shoe?
Well, the main thing is the fit. an essence of a comfortable shoe is one that's snug in the heel and roomy around the toes. That's
Very
as simple as
succinctly
that.
put.
Yeah.
A huge amount of work goes into a pair of handmade shoes. A pair of tailor's finest can cost upwards of £1,000. The other thing we have to obviously realise is that they're not cheap things, are they, a handmade shoe? And how do you see the future of what you're doing?
People have said, well, when's your heyday? And I'd say now. You know, so many shoes are made in China or other parts of the world where things are much cheaper, but they don't get the quality of materials and the quality of workmanship, which then people are looking for something better and not something cheaper.
They used to say an American inherits money, but an Englishman inherits shoes. And for sure, a handmade shoe is a very hefty investment. But what a thing of great beauty, and what a tragedy it would be to see this historic trade disappear from the streets of London forever. There's a less pricey way to spruce up your appearance, of course, a trip to the barber's. This is Flitner's in the heart of the city. When it opened in 1902, the city was full of small businesses catering for the needs of the city gent. But nowadays, places like this are few and far between. Today, it's run by Chris Christodoulou, who's been wielding scissors here for more than 30 years. What would life have been like in this shop in 1904?
Well, in those days, the shop was very much run like military fashion. The boss, Flitner, would march backwards and forwards and keep an eye on the staff. They had to stand at their post waiting for the next customer with their towel in their arm. And if anybody looked as if they were not quite up to scratch in appearance, he would run across the road and buy them a collar. In those days there were separate collars, and get them to change it, and tick them off and tell them not to do it again. Nowadays we're a bit more relaxed on all that sort of thing. We don't have to stand to our post, but a prominent thing is to be polite to our customers. And talking to them is not obligatory. We only do it if they want us to talk. And sometimes it's very quiet in here, which allows them to relax and chill out a bit, as they say.
I have to tell my barber that, because he insists on having the same conversation with me.
Well, that's
been having the same one for 20 years. I said to him the other day, I said, I really don't feel like having this conversation today. And he's put his thing down. You know, it's very unusual for a barber to look you in the face and not look at you in your reflection. And he said, if I fall out of practice having this conversation, there'll come a time when I won't be able to have it anymore.
Yeah.
And this will be the only conversation you're having all week, because you'll be a lonely old man, so shut up and listen. If you don't fancy a chat, you can always sit back in these beautiful old chairs and simply enjoy the view.
From the marble upwards, including the ceiling, is all original. From the marble down, unfortunately, we had to change it a couple of times because it gets a hell of a lot of bashing with the cleaners and gets knocked about. But I've tried to keep it in tune with the rest of it.
Of course, the traditional barber offers more than a simple haircut. Back in Mr. Flitner's time, men would queue around the block for a chance to have a razor held against their throat. You need a very steady hand for this job. In the old days, barbers were put through enormous amounts of training and exacting tests before they were let loose on their customers. Which is why I brought this along. What, you're asking yourself, has the balloon got to do with barbering? Well, take a look at this.
The would-be barber stands by. He is just itching to get hold of that razor. But such confident strokes aren't as easy as they look. First essential is a good lather. But here's the only safe way to learn. A real thin-skinned customer, one slip and he just blows up. Easy does it.
Before we go any further, could I see one of your best men at work?
Yes, of course, Peter will show you.
OK, well that looks suitably foamed up to me.
Ready for the shave now?
Ready for your shave, sir?
Yes.
He's ready. few done, Peter, but I've got to say, it doesn't look too difficult. Let's have a go, mate. Yeah, come
I
on.
saw yours.
So you put the one finger there, do it, yeah. Had a good day at work today, sir?
Sharp, isn't it? Look at that.
You didn't know that was coming, did you? What, no tip? What a stinge bag. Lovely. But of course, the most famous barber of them all plied his trade just west of here in Fleet Street. His name was Sweeney Todd, and according to legend, he butchered over 100 of his customers before giving the bodies to his accomplice, Marjorie Lovett, who made them into pies. And talking of pies, coming up next, I'll be cooking up a storm in a traditional pie shop kitchen and discovering what goes on beneath this mysterious-looking dome. Long before the days of burgers or Baltis, there was the good old-fashioned pie, London's original fast food. On street corners across the capital, there were traditional pie and mash shops like this one on Broadway Market in North London. In the old days, eel pies were top of the bill, but eels are harder to come by these days, so beef is now the favourite filling. The Cooks are one of a trio of families who dominated the business for decades, along with the Manzeys and the Kellys. This shop opened in 1910, but it really hit its stride in the 30s, when the whole place had a major refit. Robert Cook's memories of the business stretch back to the post-war years when his parents ran the shop.
I remember, I don't know, mid-60s, I was working here with my dad when I was a youngster. Friday and Saturday we used to close at 6 o'clock, reopen at 8, and we'd go along till about just before 11. The pubs would say, right, drinking up at 11, all out by 5 past, and by 11:15 they'd all be in here, we'd be absolutely packed out. They'd be eating pie and mash on there, everywhere. There'd be no place to be had, do you know what I mean?
And now, of course, you're all a bit more backs to the wall and these places are fizzling out.
Well, that's right, because you've got McDonald's and Kentucky and whatever. We spread that much thinner, but you've still got a clientele. I think there'll always be a little niche for pie and mash.
Which is good news for Robert's regulars. Doris and Jane are sisters who've been coming here since they were kids.
I always remember sitting up this end, you know, just come running in and she said, "What do you want, love?" You know, so pie and mash, please. That used to be a cheap dinner, see. Mother used to give us 6 minutes to get you out of the way.
So for you, it would be a shame if these places stopped being?
We'd be lost. But you would be lost. I think you would be lost without this, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I hope you're still going, right, as far as, well, long as I'm going. I hope this is going.
Yeah, me and all.
Are the pies still as good?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're still nice.
Mm.
There you go, there's you, Dov. Is that all right for you? Yeah, forward stone. It's chilli for you.
Thanks, Bob.
Do you want to drop chilli vinegar?
No, thanks.
You'll be all right. You're okay. All right, girls.
Well, they're obviously all enjoying their nosh out there. I've sneaked out the back to the kitchen to find out what Robert's secret really is.
There's the bakehouse, Suggs, here. Do that, keep it a bit tidy.
Oh, that's Arsenal colours.
Don't worry, I'm Tottenham.
So this is the inner sanctum then of cooks and pie makers.
This is our hot plate where we do the potatoes and the liquor. There's your spuds there ready to go through.
So I'm here to find out the secret ingredient of your liquor.
Well, you'll see part of it. Right, now, there's a liquor there. I've got all my bits and pieces in there. If you want to put a nice shovel of that fresh parsley in there, that's it, don't be lousy. And again.
Nice smell, that.
That's it, lovely.
Gordon Ramsay, yeah.
That's it, right, put your top back on there. Well, I've got that one boiling over there for you.
So, Robert, we've got our liquor coming on lovely there, but
Yes.
we're going to need something to put it on, aren't we? Who's eating all the pies?
Right, Suggs, you normally make 48 at a time.
Yeah. And Robert, how many pies do you reckon you get through in a week?
In a week? Well, I don't know, I suppose about 700 or 800 pies I've
Yeah?
during the week. Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Suggs, if you take a couple of those in your left hand, like that, and then slide them off onto the dish.
Got it? How?
Just about. Never mind, they'll get sent back.
Oh, there you go. Nice
We didn't
one.
order a wonky pie. Lovely, look at that.
Right,
So we really are talking about freshly made produce here.
Yeah.
And what's that a mixture of in there?
Well, that's our beef flanks that we use. Salt and pepper mixed, gravy browning,
Lovely.
nothing else added. I haven't shown you this up. This is the hotline from Bristow. And this just tops up the gravy. Yeah, look. But it's a clear colour, but it's from Bristow anyway, so.
I'm no expert, but I do believe they're missing tops, aren't they, Rob?
That's what we've got to do now.
Good thinking.
Did you used to play with plasticine as a kid?
Yeah.
Oh, it's very much like this as well.
I used to make little animals and things, though. Because they're handmade, each one's slightly different. You're not looking at something that's made in the factory, yeah.
No, that's right.
Yeah. Individual personalities, I like to think.
Yeah. Like a proper Tottenham man, I think that's lovely.
Get out of it.
Good man, you've done well. And mind your finger, just rest him on there. Now give him to me. We'll put it about halfway in.
That's a lovely old oven, isn't it? Look at that.
Well, that went in 67, the other one before that was about 1930. So.
What do you think of the future for this place?
Well, you've still got a local fraternity around here, but we've got a farmers market on a Saturday. You've got different type of people, and all of a sudden, after a couple of years, they seem to be filtering in now. Whereas they didn't come in, I can see new faces coming into the shop.
And is there a successor to you in the family?
Well, I've got a couple of girls and a boy. I think there's other things out there for the boy, to be honest, but I think one of my girls has got a little thing for the shop, and I think it'll always keep running.
This is the Victoria and Albert Museum in South Ken. Like the other great London museums, it's a reminder of the Victorians' appetite for knowledge and public education. But alongside these mighty cathedrals of learning, a whole host of other scientific societies sprang up in the 19th century. Back in 1879, whilst compiling a dictionary of London, Charles Dickens Jr. asked people to write in with details of their societies so that he could include them in his book. Amongst the many replies he got responses from the Anthropological Institute, the Archaeological Association, the Horological Institute, the Geological Society of London, the Harveian Society of London, my particular favourite, the Numismatic Society of London, whatever happened to them, the London Mathematical Society, the Meteorological Society, the Royal Botanic Society of London, so on and so on, and they're just the people who wrote back. Many of those august societies have fallen by the wayside since then, but others are still hanging on. I'm heading to Hampstead to find out more about one of them. These steps lead to the highest point in London. There's nowhere in the capital that's closer to the stars. Which makes it an excellent place to build one of these. It may look rather like a grand garden shed, but in fact, this is the Hampstead Observatory. They've been scanning the heavens from here for more than a century. Douglas Daniels is the man in charge. What's an observatory doing in Hampstead Heath?
Well, it all started in 1898 when a certain resident of Hampstead by the name of Major Henry Heberden offered a 10-inch reflecting telescope to the London County Council as a gift, provided they could make it available to members of the public. Well, at that time, the London County Council refused to accept the gift. But it came to the attention of a prominent local amateur astronomer by the name of Patrick Vizard, who decided that it would be a very good excuse to form an astronomical and scientific society in Hampstead.
Well, may I have a look inside?
Yes, come in.
Aha! So is this the original telescope?
No, unfortunately not. No one knows what happened to the original reflecting telescope, but this is a 6-inch refracting telescope. It was built in about 1900 by Thomas Cook of York, known as a Cook refractor. It was presented to the Society by one of its members, George Avenel, in 1923, and it's the instrument that's been in constant use. And it's a very fine instrument indeed.
So, Doug, how do you actually get the hole in line with the telescope and move it?
Well, I'll show you. We've got a crafty pulley system, and my able assistant Simon will show you how it operates.
Wow.
No automation here.
No. Great. So, Doug, what problems face the observatory?
Well, the problems that face most observatories, particularly in urban environments, are light pollution and just general pollution. We live at the outskirts of a very large city, which is covered with street lighting, artificial lighting, that lights the whole sky up, which means that we can no longer show people the glorious views of distant nebulae and star clusters, and we have to concentrate on the moon and planets in the main. And another problem that we face is the fact that young people don't seem to be coming forward as they used to in the past. And this is pretty general with societies of our sort. The average age is well into its 50s, basically.
Yeah. How would you feel if you thought this place was going to go?
Oh, well, I'd be very upset because it's been going for so long. And this society has introduced many, many people to the study of astronomy, people who have gone on to graduate and become professional astronomers.
And it's not only the observatory that makes this place special. Tucked away in this beehive-shaped box is equipment that's been recording the weather every day since 1909, making it London's longest-serving weather station. You don't need to be a weather expert to see that a cloudy evening like this one is bad news for the budding astronomer. It may not be the biggest or most sophisticated observatory, but what a charming and marvellous tribute it is to the age and the spirit of those great Victorian amateur scientists. And unfortunately, tonight's not the night for looking at stars, but if you're ever passing on a clear Friday or Saturday night, what better place to come and marvel at the wonders of the universe? Next time on Disappearing London, I'm going underground to tell the story of London's last trams.
You can actually get down the side of the street.
Discovering why the Olympics could mean the end for these East End allotments. And heading for the pub in pursuit of sporting excellence.